Hi guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Welcome to my 2024 reading wrap up. I am so excited to film this video for you all. This is one of my favorite videos of the year to watch, to film, to everything. I know it's kind of late, but better late than never, as I always say. So I read 48 books this year. My goal was 45. So we're little overachievers this year, and I can't wait to just discuss, tell y'all what I thought about books I read, and let you know if you should read them. We'll get right into that. If you're wanting to know like what kind of books I read, so I like romance, fantasy, mystery, but I really like when they are clean, simple romances and all that. I'm not a huge fan of spice. Well, I'm not a fan of spice. If a book does have it, because I do want to read it for the plot, I will skip right over it. I just don't think I should be filling my mind with that, and I'm not a fan of it. So I'll just skip right by it, and then I'll keep on reading, just pretend it's not there. Without further ado, we should just get right into these books. I have my iPad here with all my books that I read. So first in January, I read The Cousins by Karen M. McManus, but that ended up being a DNF, which I know is crazy. The first read of the year was a DNF, but I did rate it 2 stars, but it just did not make sense to me. Like, even thinking about it now, like, I vividly remember this book, but it just did not make sense. So basically, these cousins, their parents used to get along and be like a big family, like they should be, and then there's some type of falling out. Grandma now lives on a like island that she runs like a resort, and she doesn't really talk to them, but the cousins all get sent there, and they're trying to figure out why the family is the way they are now. But there's this weird plot with one of the cousins. Like, it just seemed like they were working and just doing more resort things and actually trying to figure out why their family doesn't like each other. In January, I read If He Had Been With Me by Lauren Nolan. Whoa, this book was so good. I kept getting it recommended. It was sad. If you do know anything about the book, it tells you the tragedy between these two childhood best friends, and it tells you that very quickly, like the first page. And so then you follow their story of why they have a falling out, why they become friends again, like all that, and you know, the romance that starts building, and you get so involved in that story, and it deals very well on like teenager angst and being in high school and all of that like fun feeling of high school. Being in high school myself, I just love that story. You get so wrapped up in that you forget about the tragedy, and it's just so tragic. 4 stars. And then I read The Exception to the Rule by Christina Lauren. So this was a part of like the little different authors will release these novellas through Kindle, and they're just short little reads that you can read on your Kindle. They're super quick, super fun, and this one I liked. It was basically what it says, the exception to the rule. This character, he had a rule that he wanted to date these certain people, and then he fell for the girl. Loved it so much. 3 stars. So, and then for February, I read The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. This was for school. I do count my school reads because obviously I am reading them, so like, why one at a time? But I really love this book. If you haven't read it, I feel like it's a really good classic to get into, because it doesn't feel like a classic. It's very adventurous. You're following this like group of characters and Mr. Gatsby, his feelings and his riches, and how he tries to go after this girl that he wants, but she's married, and it just follows the theme of love, being young in your 20s, greed, money, all of that. And it's wrapped up into the beautiful scene of the 20s in New York and all that. And then in March, so I took a little break from reading during school, and then I started reading back in March. And so I read The Cool Prince, which is the Folk of the Air series. Love that. That was the first book of that series, so I rated it 4 stars. I loved it. It's more of a fantasy than an actual like romantasy, so definitely read it for like the politics side. But it's basically the main girl, she is human, but she lives in the Elfin, which is in different creatures and goblins and stuff. They just see her almost as like a weaker link, that she can't actually be a fighter like she wants to be. And I really recommend it. So good. It got me into fantasy. And then I read The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams, which this got me into Sarah Adams, and I'm obsessed with her. She's one of my favorite authors. She writes clean, simple, quick, fluffy, just pure cotton candy for your brain romances. Love them. They're so good. And this one is about Bree and Nathan, and Bree is a dancer and Nathan is a professional football player. They used to be best friends in college, and they kind of grew apart, and they're trying to, you know, they're growing back apart a little bit, and they start catching feelings. And it was so good. It was funny, it was quick, I loved it. It was just so simple. And then in April I read The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston, which was one of my most favorite reads of this year. It follows Clementine, who moves to New York in her aunt's old apartment, and you know, as she's moving in, she's a young girl trying to make a start for herself. This apartment will slip back and forth into time. You know, through that she learns lots about her life and gains different perspectives, and I love that book. It just taught me a lot about love and fate, coincidences, and the way things happen in life, and waiting on the one that you truly love, things like that. Loved it so much. It was a 5-star read for me. And then continuing in April, I read Betting on You by Lynn Painter. I love Lynn Painter, especially I haven't read any of her adult books, but I love all her young adult. This one was so cute. It follows Charlie and Bailey, who they both have had kind of little rough passes, and their ideas on love are definitely very different, even though they come from like similar backgrounds. What love is, and it's just so cute, and they make little bets. It's just like a fun little low stakes like romance, and them just being kids and being in high school. Like, I really enjoyed that. That was a 3-star read. Now we are in May, where I read The Wicked King, which is the second book in the Folk of the Air series. This was a 3-star read for me. Really good. It just kind of followed the same plot, you know, tied up the loose ends from the first book. So now we're moving on to June, where I read my favorite read of the whole year, and that is You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hoggle. Now, this book doesn't get talked about a lot, but it definitely should. It's about this couple that's engaged, and they're both having cold feet. They're both having issues with the other one and the families, and you know, actually, so they start playing these games of trying to get the other person to pull off the wedding. So they pull these little pranks and silly little things. Truly, truly, truly love that book. And if you've read it, that book, the canoe scene, I think about that scene all the time, and I laugh out loud all the time. That book had me like cackling. It was so good. I read Ship by Angie Hoffman. This was another simple romance I found at my library about these two marketers, and they work for a cruise line, and they are sent on this cruise to market it and to, like, you know, gain status of it, but they're competing for the same title, like promotion. And then some of y'all gonna come after me for this one, but I read Check and Mate by Allie Hazelwood, and I rated it 2 stars. Okay, I love Allie Hazelwood. Love her. I love The Love Hypothesis. But this book was not hitting it for me. I did read this, started it in like April, and then finished it in June, and read it very broken. It just didn't really make much sense to me. But moving on, I read Meet Me at the Lake by Carly Fortune. This was a 4-star read for me. I love this book. A dual timeline of how these two people, they used to, you know, go out and date, and you know what's changed, why they did that, and how they fall back in love. Just the simpleness of it. It was very summery. Setting was a little resort in Canada that the main girl was trying to keep, and very loved it so much. And then I read One of Us is Back, which was the 3rd book in the One of Us is Lying trilogy. Wasn't a huge fan of it. It was good. I'm glad we, you know, got the finale of all the characters and how they moved on from the events in the 1st and 2nd book. It was good. Glad I read it, but didn't think much of it. And then I started reading The Natural by Jennifer Lim. Absolutely love this book. Rated at 4 stars. So basically, 5 different teens get chosen to be in this FBI program where they work different cases. They all have something that happened to them in their past, and you find out about that through the series. It had just the most shocking turnaround, the twist. Like, you're just so invested in the story, then it twists all of a sudden. Okay, so Practice Makes Perfect, which was the 2nd book in the When in Rome. So I had not read the first, but I had to read So You Follow Will and Annie is the sister to the main guy in the 1st book, and Will is the bodyguard of the girl in the 1st book as well. But Annie's very shy and innocent, and everyone sees her as the sweet girl that, like, she's like the prized possession of the town. And then Will is a little rougher, and the people see him as an outsider, and it was just so cute. It was so funny. The town, really recommend it. I loved it. I rated it 4 stars. So starting in July, I read The Killer Instinct, which is the 2nd book in the Natural series. Loved it. I loved where it took you, and the different, like, you just learn more about the characters. So good. 4 stars. And then I read Maybe Meant to Be by K.L. Walther. So I read her other 2 books, The Summer Will Be Different and Meet Me After Midnight. So I gave this book a try. Wasn't a huge fan. Again, at a boarding school, and you follow these 4 different kids, and you know their plans after graduation, what their hopes and dreams in life, and how they all meet together. And it was good. Not a huge fan of it. It's, again, I like the boarding school, the being in the high school thing. Glad I read it. Then I read This Summer Will Be Different by Carly Fortune, and this was another cute summery Carly Fortune book. Lucy and her best friend who's about to get married, and then Lucy's brother. So as you can tell, you know this is going to be a really good book. It's on a beachy setting in Prince Edward Island in Canada, and it was just so good. I loved like the different, like them eating oysters and them going out and going for drives, like sunset, like all of it was just so beachy. And then I read Happy Place by Emily Henry, and I absolutely love that book. It had such a unique concept, but you're gonna go in blind for it because I wasn't sure what I was getting myself into, and it was so good. And then I read Summer Romance by Annabelle Monaghan. This book was super cute. So basically, Allie, she is a single mom who recently got a divorce, and she recently had a passing in her life. So she's really struggling with that, and one day she takes her dog on a walk and has this little run-in, this guy named Ethan, and it turns out she used to know him, and you know, it just goes into all that of them falling for each other and how caring and kind Ethan is. Like, he is so caring towards the kids, and he does special things for them. Love that book. It was so summery. And then I read Never Lie by Frida McFadden, which was my first Frida book of the year, and man, was I left shook. I was recommended this book by a friend, read it, loved it so much. This couple, they go to this open house, and it turns out to be an ex-psychiatrist's house, and it follows a dual timeline, and you're figuring out different things about this house because, you know, they're trapped in this house because there's this big snowstorm, and you're figuring out and why this house almost seems haunted. So good. And then I read the rule book, second little book in the cheat sheet series. So the way Sarah Adams writes her book is she puts them into worlds, so you can read one without reading the other. They follow characters from the book, so like it's nice to read them all connected, but you don't have. So I read the rule book and rated it 4 stars. Absolutely loved this book. I love a good sports romance, and this one was fake dating, college ex-lovers, and it was just so good. Oh my gosh. And the guy in here, he's so protective and swoon-worthy. I love the way Sarah Adams writes her men because they're so good. And then I read Wooden Room by Sarah Adams, which was the first book in that series. So I was like, you know, I really liked Practice Makes Perfect. We're gonna try this book. Ended up not really liking it. I just felt like it was very lacking. Like, it was very repetitive. So basically, Amelia is a famous pop star who's in need of a break. So she runs away to this town called Rome, Kentucky, and she runs into this guy named Noah who's very popular in this town, and he's known for running the bakery and stuff. And he's very like guarded and doesn't really like to let people in. So it follows them and him starting to let his armor crack and all, but I just felt like it was really repetitive. Like, I don't know, not a huge fan of it. And then I read Once a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. I kept seeing this book recommended to me all over my TikTok and Instagram and all, and I had to give it a try. It follows Evangeline Fox and how her search for love and all the stakes she will do to find this love. She runs into these different characters and she makes bets and treaties with them, and it's a very nice magical world. And then I read The Cheerleaders by Kara Thomas. Wasn't a fan, rated it 2 stars. And then I read The Perfect Marriage by Genevieve Rose. Oh my gosh, this book was like crazy. It follows this husband and wife, and the husband randomly gets charged for murder that he claimed he did not commit, and the wife is this famous lawyer. So they're trying to get to the bottom of what is going on. And we're finally into August, guys. Finally out of July. So then I read The Queen of Nothing, the 3rd book in the Folk of the Air series. This one was so good. The fight scene, continuation, the ending was also good. 4-star read. And then I read Ballad of Never After, 2nd book in the Once Upon a Broken Heart series, and I did not think this series could get any better, but it just continued that same love I had for the first book, and them trying to find love and bets that they carried. And then I read the reappearance of Rachel Price. Obviously what it is this family had Rachel Price disappear, and so they don't know why she disappeared, so they filmed this TV series because it's like a very famous case. As the title says, she reappeared, and it just follows why she reappeared, trying to gain a relationship with her mom again. If you've ever read a Holly Jack book, you just know she is full of twists and surprises, so you're never prepared for anything she's about to write. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time, and I enjoyed it so very much. It was a 5-star read for me. And then sadly, I finished the Once Upon a Broken Heart series with A Curse for True Love. The second book leaves you off at a cliffhanger. When you get to figure out what happens, everything just melts into place. It makes so much sense, and the love you feel for the characters and you're rooting for them, loved it. And then I read The Housemaid by by Freida McFadden because I was trying to get into more thrillers. I wasn't a huge fan of this book. I read it, rated 3 stars. It was more disturbing than anything. So it follows this maid that starts working for this really rich family, and suspicious things keep happening. And then I read the Boys of Tommen series. So I started with Finding 13, and I absolutely love this book. This is over a 600-page book, and I read it in a week. Basically, Shannon and Johnny. So Shannon is a shy girl who transfers to this school, and Johnny is this really popular, outgoing rugby player. And so on the first day of school that Shannon goes to, she has this run-in with Johnny, and it didn't really end well. And so her mom's mad at Johnny, and so it starts almost this kind of like distance, this forbiddenness between them. But you know, Johnny's fascinated to it, so it follows him trying to get to the bottom of why Shannon is the way she is. And then Keeping 13, I read it immediately after the first book leaves you off on a cliffhanger, which is just crazy. Like, why would you do that? But so you want to figure out what is going on, and this book is definitely really sad because it deals with a lot of loss and tragedy, and it was so sad. But I rated it 5 stars. Into September, where I read The Yellow Wallpaper for School, is another classic that's really good, and I really enjoyed it. Like the themes of motherhood, feminism, what the wallpaper symbolized, and like how she wrote, because that was the only way back to her sanity. And then I read Caraval by Stephanie Garber. I really liked this book. So these two sisters, they live in they get invited to Caraval, which is this like special event that happens very rare. They get invited to it, but it's very like deceiving, and it's full of magic, so you can't trust anything. So they go off in the night, they sneak away to it. The sister disappears, so the other sister is trying to find her sister because she needs to get back, because she's engaged to a man that she has not met, and it's very whimsical and like fantasy. And then entering November, I read All In, which is the 3rd book in the Natural series. So good. I liked this book. It was, I think, my least favorite in the series, but it was good. Love the continuation of the series. The more you find out about the characters, it was a 3-star read for me. And then I immediately went into Bad Blood, which is the last. Absolutely love this book. The ending, the how all these cases connect together is so good, and just the emotional journey you go on with that book. And then that book also has a little novella which kind of like wraps up and gives you a final summary of where all the characters are, called 12. So then I read Survive by Holly Zinn, and basically it follows this friend group who is traveling in an RV to go to spring break, start having trouble with their RV, so they pull off on the side of the road into this little like wooded area and start getting shot at. And so now they are trapped in the RV, no way out. You don't know why they're trapped in there, and none of the characters know why they're trapped in there. They pretty much have to give themselves an escape, and it's so good. Again, Holly Jackson gives you incredible twists that you never see coming. Loved it so much. So then December, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, and I rated it 2 stars. I just feel like this book was really dragged on, but I get why it was written for the time period and how it made people scared, because it was the first time that someone was questioning their creator and like what it means to be created and to obey who you're created by. Really good for the time period, and I like the themes it discussed. And then I read Bright Lights Big Christmas by Mary Kay Andrews. This was a very cute, simple romance. This family, they own a Christmas tree farm, and the brother and the sister are sent to New York to sell Christmas trees, and they sell on the block that they've sold there their whole lives during December. You know, they meet new people and they have friendship. There's a little mystery element to it. Very good. Nothing crazy. And then my last book of the year, which was a rough one, was How My Neighbor Stole Christmas by Megan Quinn, and I rated it 1 star. It was so bad, guys. Oh gosh, I do not recommend this book whatsoever. I did not think it was, oh gosh, it was bad. But that is all for this video. If you've stuck far at this point, put the little book stack emoji, and I'm just so glad you all watched this video, and I hope you got some recommendations, and I will be seeing you all in my next video. Remember, I love you, but most importantly, Jesus loves you. And the comment I left on Goodreads was, I want to marry this man.